Well, hi again. This is part two of revitalising your church. How do we get that going? Part one, we looked at whose job is it? Is it our job to build the church and to reach out and to get more people in the church, fill the church up? And we concluded that yes, it was a little bit up to us because Christ has called us to do this thing. So that's sort of what we should do. Part two, I want to look at the question, is this possible? A lot of people ask, is this possible? They ask it in various ways. Firstly, pointing out the decline of the church. Being aware that that we've had decades of decline. And I know in our church in Australia, looking at the statistics and the trajectory of our church, we've never actually had a time where our church has grown statistically across Australia. We've declined every year since we got it together. So that's all we've known. All we've known is a declining church. And that's been all my lifetime. We've been in decline. So how is it possible now to turn it around? This old coot talking to you right now reckons that he's got some brainwave of how we're going to turn this around. Well, let me tell you now, I've got nothing new, but I've got plenty old, and this old stuff works. But anyway, apart from that, there's this objection that we've seen decades of decline. How are we going to turn that around? Is it possible? People say we've tried so many things, we've done so many different things, we've tried and failed. So that's another objection to revitalisation, and the possibility of revitalisation is that we've tried and failed. Yes, we've tried a lot of things and we've failed at a lot of things. That doesn't mean that we should stop. Probably means that we know what doesn't work, or maybe we need combinations. But the fact is, we've tried a lot of stuff, and that people can get a bit shell shocked with that success rate being so low that they can't find a way or can't see a way forward for us because we've tried so many things and it just hasn't worked. Then they'll point to the obstacles. They say there are so many obstacles. People are distracted by so many things. We have Sunday shopping, we have Sunday sport, we have, what they teach in schools is contrary to the church. Where society is going, it just makes it so hard. People are so busy. People are so poor. People are so unhappy. People find it so difficult to get to church, get out of bed Sunday morning, whatever. There are all of these things that people point to as obstacles for revitalisation to be anywhere near successful. Well, let's have a look at the early church, shall we? Let's have a look at the situation of the early church and what they were speaking into. And what we see is a church that was facing obstacles, that tried lots of things, that did fail, that struggled, that there were people falling away. There were difficulties in the early church. You read some of the encouragements of Paul. When he says, I want you to be united. Well, the reason he says that is because they were being fragmented. They were arguing within themselves and arguing against each other. So what we're going to see is with all of the encouragements in the New Testament, what we're seeing is the reason for those encouragements because they're the antithesis of what was actually happening. And into all of that, Jesus' words are, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. In Matthew 16, he says to Peter, Peter, you are the rock, and on this rock I will build my church. When he said, you are the Christ, when he recognised Jesus for who he was, he says, on this rock I will build my church, on the rock of the apostles and the rock of the apostles' teaching. This was Jesus was going to build his church on that. But what he said then is interesting. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. Listen to the language in that there's the very gates of hell were not able to withstand the marching of God's people as they moved forward towards their goal, which was world evangelism. That's our goal. So technically it's possible to start a church in hell. We can move in and build a church, start a church, have a successful growing church in Satan's own territory. That's what that's saying. So let no obstacle stand in your way, because Jesus won't. He recognises these obstacles, and he's wanting to give us the power to do what he asks us to do. He empowers what he commands. See, he says in Matthew 28, verse 18 to 20, that's the Great Commission. He says that we've got to go out and make disciples of all nations, baptising them, so and so. He says, at the end of that, he says, and behold, what did he say? I am with you always to the end of the age. That's what he says. So when we go out and do his will, making his disciples, we see that he is with us. It's not conditional, is that he's not saying, if you do as you're told, I'll be with you. No, he says, and behold, I am with you. I am, right? It's a statement of fact. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So the thing is, though, it's not until we start trying the things that he commanded us to do that we see his power. A lot of people think, I can't see God's power at work. How is this ever going to work? Well, the reason you can't see it working is because you're not doing it, and so therefore you're not going to see the power of God at work. If you do what he asks you to do, you'll see his power, because you'll see his promises fulfilled on the other side of that doing. How do you know that you've got that power? How do you know unless you give it a go? There's a lot of people saying, we don't have the power, we can't do it. That's what they're saying when they're saying, we've been in decline for so long, how can we turn it around? We've tried and failed. There are so many obstacles. The world out there is against us. What they're saying is, we don't have the power. Jesus hasn't given us the power. Who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe them, the people who aren't doing it? Or are you going to believe Jesus, who calls you to do it? Are you going to believe them, who can't see the power of God at work? Or are you going to believe Jesus, who says that he will give you the power and give you the ability to see it through? Who are you going to believe? I think right from the outset, as the church, if you're in a difficult place as a church, if we find ourselves with empty pews and very little mission happening, we've got to ask ourselves the question, right, from here on, we've found it difficult. How are we going to go forward? Who are we going to believe? Let's start believing for a miracle. Let's start believing for the hand of God at work in our lives, the hand of God at work in our churches, that we might see them grow. It's exciting, isn't it? This stuff might work. Let's give it a go.